In this episode of the CySec101 series, we're going to go through the Metasploit introduction, which is a very powerful tool in exploitation, as the name implies. And this is a part of the exploitation basics, which is a part of the cybersecurity 101 pathway of TryHackMe. And of course, in the exploitation basics module, we've already covered the moniker link introduction, which was in the last video. And then we have Metasploit introduction. We're going to go through exploitation, interpreter, and then we're going to have one final exercise where we actually do some exploitation, capture the flag type situations with the blue room. And that's pretty much what we got for exploitation. And as the outline of this episode, so we do have the intro to Metasploit, we have main components, we have the Msfconsole working with the various modules, and we're going to do a summary, and then I'm going to give you some final notes, and we're going to wrap it up, and you'll be dismissed from today's lesson. And that's pretty much it for today. We're going to be just talking about Metasploit. I love this thing. It's a very, very powerful tool. I think you will also fall in love with it as soon as you learn how powerful it is as well. So I'm really excited to share this with you, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. If you'd like to support this channel, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous, which is the premier YouTube community for security professionals and hackers. We have 4 tiers, which is the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content, but the agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content. They get exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And you can simply join by clicking the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the Metasploit introduction room. Metasploit is by far the most widely used exploitation framework. So when we're talking about a framework, we're referring to essentially a culmination of tools and Python code, as well as scripts and any other type of language, JavaScript or cross-site scripting. Like, there are so many types of modules and exploits and libraries and ancillaries and so many various elements that make Metasploit what it actually is, that it's very difficult to compare it to anything else, because it's really robust. It can do a lot of great things, and it can take you from going from the reconnaissance step of a penetration test all the way to post-exploitation, when you've actually gone into the service or the system or the network, and now you want to do your post-exploitation tactics. It can do all of those steps that are involved inside of a penetration test, which is, again, why it is one of the most widely used exploitation frameworks. And I'm still learning about all of the different modules that exist in it, because there are literally thousands of modules that are inside of Metasploit. And I've only used the framework, like the basic framework version, not the Metasploit Pro, because this is the commercial version that has the automation and management of tasks, and it has an actual GUI, and then it also has, I would presume that it has even more options that we can use than the framework itself has done. But the framework is the open source version, and it works from the command line. So if you can think about somebody having created a GUI so that somebody could easily exploit a network, it's pretty amazing to think about how powerful Metasploit can actually be, and how easy it is to be a hacker in the modern era, really. But we're going to be using the Metasploit framework, which is all on the command line, and it's installed with pretty much every Linux distribution, or at the very least on the Kali Linux versions or the PenTesting versions of Linux. It comes pre-installed, and it's of course installed in the attack box that I'm going to be using today. Now, that being said, this is actually a free room that's available on TryHackMe, so it doesn't include, or it doesn't require a paid subscription to TryHackMe. You literally can just get a free membership just by your email and password, and then you'll get access to this room, as well as the attack box of this room, as well as the target machine of this room, and you can run all of the exercises that we can run for free completely. If you decided to get a paid membership, it's literally $12 a month, but if you use the link in the description below, it'll end up being $5 off of that, so it becomes even more inexpensive. And I know for a fact that people spend more on coffee per week, if not per day, than you can spend to get a membership to TryHackMe. So it's a really, really powerful resource. I love this website, and I mean, you already, if you've seen any of my episodes or any of my videos, you should know how much of a fondness I have for TryHackMe. Now, that being said, we are going to talk about essentially what this thing is. So it's a set of tools, right? So Metasploit is a set of tools that allow information gathering, scanning, exploitation, exploit development, post-exploitation. While the primary usage of the framework focuses on penetration testing, it also can be used for vulnerability research and exploit development. So you can actually develop exploits. The main components of the Metasploit framework can be summarized as the console, Msfconsole, the modules. So these are the supporting modules like the exploits and the scanners and the payloads and a bunch of other stuff. And then the tools. So standalone tools that will allow you to do your vulnerability research, the assessments, penetration testing. MSF Venom is in there, pattern create and pattern offset are in there. Nmap is one of the tools. Like there's just so many tools that are inside of Metasploit. So again, just a really powerful tool here. So we're going to cover the main components of this while providing you with a solid foundation on how to find relevant exploits, set parameters, and exploit vulnerable services on the target system. Once you've completed this, you'll be able to navigate and use the Metasploit command line comfortably. And I've already started the attack box. I've also started our target machine, our victim machine. So we are ready to run and gun. So let's get into it. So the way that we're going to interact with the Metasploit framework or the console, the Metasploit console, is by first just calling on it by typing in Msfconsole. And then when you type that in, you just press enter, and then it takes a couple of seconds and then it loads. And so the very first thing that they want to first just kind of, I guess, introduce to us is that, you know, we have the exploits, which is the piece of code that uses a vulnerability present on the target system. The vulnerability, which is a design or coding or logic flaw affecting their target system. The exploitation of a vulnerability can result in disclosing confidential information or allowing us to execute code on the target. And then the payload, which is the exploit that will take advantage of a vulnerability. So essentially, it's what we can transfer to or use to exploit the vulnerability. If we want the exploit to have the result that we want, getting access to the target system or reading information, we need to use a payload. Payloads are the code that will run on the target system. So it's something that is transferred over to the target system. And usually you would need something like Metasploit to be able to create a payload and then to transfer the payload. And MSF Venom is one of the other kind of ancillary or subcategories of Metasploits that allows you to create payloads, right? So modules and categories under each are listed below, and this is just a list that we have available for us. So you can technically go inside of this thing. So this is the opt and then Metasploit framework, embedded, and then just type tree and then show the auxiliary. My God, auxiliary. For a second, I've completely forgot how to pronounce that. So yeah, we just do tree and then we're going to list, and then these are all of the auxiliaries, and inside of these there is a bunch of other stuff as well. So these are just for lack of a better word, these are just folders or directories that house a bunch of other stuff in them, right? And then we have the encoders. And encoders will allow you to encode the exploit and payload in the hope that a signature-based antivirus solution may miss it. Signature-based antivirus and security solutions have a database of known threats. They detect threats by comparing suspicious files to this database, and they raise the alert if there is a match. So the encoders can actually have a limited success rate, as antivirus solutions can perform additional checks as well. But these are our various encoders that would exist. And this is housed inside of the encoders folder that is inside the same path here, Metasploit framework, embedded framework modules. And then we have the encoders and then CMD generic, PHP, Ruby, so on and so forth, right? And then there's evasion. So encoders will encode the payload. They should not be considered as a direct attempt to evade antivirus software, because we just established that as if it's a decent enough software that can actually detect by a signature, it can probably try to find out what it is that you're running anyway. So on the other hand, evasion modules will try to avoid antivirus or to evade antivirus Whether or not they're successful is a whole other story, but at the very least, they're going to try to evade the antivirus. So they are housed inside of the framework modules, and then they're inside of the evasion directory. And so we have the evasion for Windows in this particular case, and you have App Locker and Windows Defender evasion, so on and so forth, right? And then we have exploits, which is a very, very large data set. A massive amount of files and folders are here. And same thing, say in the location, same path, except it's just inside of the exploits directory. And you have exploits for Android, for Apple iOS. You have exploits for Firefox. You have exploits for what else? Open BSD, for Solaris, for Unix, for Windows, for Linux. There's exploits for pretty much anything that you can think of. And then as they, of course, update Metasploit, the exploits get more expansive as well, and you get more exploits to use and to play with. So very, very powerful resource. And then we have the NOPS, which is an acronym for no operation, do nothing. So they basically don't do anything, right? So NOPS do nothing, literally. They're represented in the Intel CPU family with 0x90, following which the CPU would do nothing for one cycle. They are often used as a buffer to achieve consistent payload sizes, and they're stored inside of NOPS. And then we have them for these various CPUs as well, or these various distros, we can call them, or architectures that we can call them. And then, of course, there are payloads. So exploits will leverage a vulnerability on the target system, but to achieve this, we need a payload. Examples could be getting a shell, loading a malware or a backdoor on the target system, running a command, or launching calculator.exe as a proof of concept to add the penetration test report. Starting the calculator on the target system remotely by launching the calc.exe application is a benign way to show that we can run commands on the target system. A running command on a target system is already an important step, but having the interactive connection that allows you to type the command that will be executed on the target system is better. So it's getting that connection that's the hard part. Once you have the connection, for the most part, depending on which user you've been able to kind of exploit and get the privileges of that user, you'll be limited to the number of commands that you can run. If you can get an administrator shell or an administrator connection, then you are pretty freaking golden. And at that point, you can essentially do whatever you want. So in an interactive command line is called a shell. We also call it a reverse shell because we are technically, you can either generate a shell from your machine to the other side, or you can get a reverse shell from the other side to your machine. In either case, you're getting a shell. And the Metasploit offers the ability to send different payloads that can open shells on the target system. And so you have adapters, singles, stagers, and stages. And these are the 4 different directories that hold a variety of different payloads for us. And adapters wraps a single payload to convert them into different formats. So for example, a normal single payload can be wrapped inside a PowerShell adapter, which will make it a single PowerShell command that will execute the payload. A single or singles are self-contained payloads. You add a user, a launch notepad.exe, so on and so forth. Like, these things are various self-contained payloads. They don't need to download an additional component to run. And then a stager is responsible for setting up a connection channel between Metasploit and the target system. So it's useful when working with staged payloads. Staged payloads will first upload a stager on the target system, then download the rest of the payload stage. Excuse me. This provides some advantages, as the initial size of the payload will be relatively small compared to the full payload sent at once. And then we have stages, which are downloaded by the stager, and this will allow you to use larger sized payloads. So Metasploit has a subtle way to help you identify single, also called inline payloads, and stage payloads. And these are reverse TCP shells, right? So generic shell reverse TCP, Windows shell reverse TCP. Both are reverse Windows shells. The former is an inline or a single payload, which is this thing, and indicated by the underscore between the shell and reverse, while the latter is a staged payload indicated by the / between shell and reverse. So that's the way that we can differentiate this, is that when you see the / you can think that this is a staged payload. And then when you see the underscore that's separating these things, this would be an inline or a single payload, right? So a single payload, also known as an inline. And then we have the staged or stager type of a payload. So post modules will be useful on the final stage of the penetration test, which is post exploitation. So once you have exploited, once you're actually in and you have gotten your interactive shell, then what do, right? What are your post exploitation options, and what can you run? And that's where these things come in. And again, for Firefox, for Linux, for Windows, for Android, for Apple iOS, all of that stuff. So if you want to familiarize yourself with this, you can find them under the modules folder of Metasploit installation. For the attack box, these are under this specific path. So we will go check that out real quick. And then we will actually type Msfconsole and start a console. And then we'll be able to run the rest of the exercises from this room. So first, let's go into our opt Metasploit location. All right, so we are now here. I basically just changed directory into this location here. And if we run our ls command, we'll see that we have these various locations, right? So we have these various directories. And then if we just do the tree and then do auxiliary, for example, you can see that you have all of these things right here. And it actually also shows us everything that is inside of it. So the command that they're actually running here that only shows you the directories is tree dash capital L and then 1. And then we have that. So let's try that one more time. And then I'm just going to do the dash capital L and then 1. So let's do this. And in this case, we will do a dash L and then we'll do 1. Press enter. Tree, oh, I see. So tree space capital L. There we go. 1 and then auxiliary. There we go. Okay, there you go. Now you actually get to see just the directories instead of everything that is inside of the directories, because this version shows us everything that's literally inside of it. So vsploit, for example, there's exploit init, malware, and then DNS, and then these are the actual Ruby files and so on and so forth. So a massive amount of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to play around with. There's a lot of stuff to learn and experiment with, and this is one of those tools that if you get good at Metasploit, you, for the most part, will be able to go toe-to-toe with anybody who is a pen tester. And if you want to go into ethical hacking or pen testing, and you just know what all the various exploits are, and you know where all the auxiliaries are, if you just know how to do all of that, and at the very least, if you've tried to use these things and you can kind of tell off the top of your head what's good and what isn't, then I'm telling you, you will stand out like heads and shoulders above anybody else that would even be trying to do that. So that is just my 2 cents on that whole thing. But I think everybody else also agrees with me that Metasploit is like one of the most powerful resources that are available. And if you were going to learn any one thing, if you were limited to learning one thing, I would probably say that Metasploit would be a really solid one for pen testing and exploitation. There's a lot of things that you can learn, right? There's a lot of different tools that you can kind of have in your tool belt. But if you were to be limited to one thing, and if Metasploit was that thing that you chose, I think you would be in really, really good shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type Msfconsole, and then we're going to press enter. And it's going to take a couple of seconds for that to launch. And then from there, we're going to start the Msfconsole task. Okay, so the time that they created this room when they ran Msfconsole, this is what came up. And then when I did it right now, it's actually a duck or a goose, I guess, or something. I think it's a duck or maybe a goose. That's the new character that comes up. I believe there has been a lot of upgrades. So this is a V6 version 6.0. This is 6.4.38 in development. This has 2,048 exploits. This has 2,460. This had 562 payloads. This has 1,468 payloads, and then 7 evasion techniques and 9 evasion techniques. So the version that I have on my attack box is clearly much more powerful than the version that they are using to write the documentation for this. So once you go through this, essentially once you've typed Msfconsole and you press enter, your command line changes, and it changes into MSF6, and then if you had like the version 5 or something, it would be MSF5. So it goes from here, right? It goes from this, which is the normal command line, and then it turns into this MSF command line that we see over here. Once we do that, then we can see the command line changes. Obviously, the Metasploit console can be used just like a regular command line shell. As you can see below, the first command is ls, which lists the contents of the folder in which Metasploit was launched inside of the actual command line. So in my particular case, I was in my very, very basic user's home, which would have the documents and my desktop and all of that stuff. So if I run that here, if I do ls, it'll show that. And then we can run basic commands like, you know, cd into the desktop, and then we'll be able to do that. And if I run ls, now I'm inside the desktop and I can see the stuff that's on the desktop, and I can go back and then do print working directory, and it'll say that's where I am. And so for the most part, it can interact with your system the way that your normal command line would, right? So in a Linux environment, these are the commands that I could run to be able to interact with my file system and navigate back and forth, so on and so forth. So same thing applies here. I believe we can even run clear, and there you go. That also still works, and it still keeps me inside of my MSF command line. So that part is pretty useful. It's actually nice to be able to run it. There's a way that, so they did another example here where we have the ping command that they ran, and they ran it against this very basic public IP address. And so it's just generating the responses from the IP address, and then it says one packet was transmitted because they only asked one packet to be transmitted, and you just get the responses as such, as if you were just running a normal ping command. So it's very, very functional in the basics, and it's very functional in like advanced commands as well, because it has all of its modules and auxiliaries and payloads and so on and so forth. So it will support most Linux commands, including clear to clear the terminal screen, but will not allow you to use some features of a regular command line. So it does not support output redirection. For example, if you wanted to do help and then output it into a text file, this output portion of this won't work. The help command can be used on its own for a specific command. Below is the help menu for the set command. So you need to set something, and this is for most, if not all, of the tools or the modules that are available inside of MSF. You would need to set the target IP address, for example, or the listening host, or the target port, or a payload, for example. So depending on what it is that you're trying to set, you would need to use the command set to set it, right? So set the given option to a value, and then we'll do this a few times so you know what we're talking about here. But basically, you can get the help menu for any given command. And then we have the history option as well, that will allow you to see what all of the different commands were that were run inside of that session of Metasploit. An important feature of the console is to support of tab completion. It'll come in handy when you're trying to use commands or dealing with modules. For example, if you want to type, or if you start typing HE and then press the tab key, you'll see that it'll autocomplete to help. It's managed by context. This means that unless it's set as a global variable, all parameters settings will be lost if you change the module and you've decided to use. So in this example, we have used the MS17010 eternal blue, and we have set the parameters such as the rhost parameter. If we switch to another one, for example, a port scanner, we would need to set the rhost value again, because everything would be reset when you leave that module, basically. So if we look at this example below, so we are using the use exploit, so on and so on and so forth. And then no payload has been configured. And then you exploit once you've actually done it, when you say use this, it changes your command line from what it was basically previously to now MSF6. And then now the exploit is included as a part of your command line, meaning that you're inside of that exploit now, and you're using Metasploit to interact with that exploit, and everything that you do from that moment on is going to be essentially limited to the limitations of this particular exploit. The module to be used can be selected with the use command followed by the number at the beginning of it. I'll show you a few examples of this. While the prompt has changed, you will notice that you can still run the commands previously mentioned. This means we did not enter a folder as you would typically expect in an operating system. So you could still run ls, right? The functionalities of this, I guess previously I misspoke. It doesn't limit you. I guess the dynamic has changed because now you have the functionalities of this exploit added to your command line, as well as the basic commands like ls and cd and things like that. So that is what I meant to say, is that once you have used an exploit and it's been added to your command line, now you have all of the functionalities that comes with this exploit, as well as all of the basic functionalities that are available as well. The prompt tells us now that we have a context set in which that we will work. You can see this by typing the show options command, and it will do this as well. And when you do show options, so you're inside of this specific exploit, you do show options. It'll give you all of the options for this exploit, and then these are the series for the MS17 right here, where we have the R host, R port, SMB domain, pass, user, verify arch, verify target. There are 4 things that are mandatory, so they're required options that you have to set. And verify arch and verify target typically come pre-configured to true, so the current setting is true, and they are mandatory, obviously. The R port and the R host, in order for this to work, you would need to set both of them. And the R host would be the target's host, also known as, I think it's called R host as the receiving host. I think that's what that is. So R hosts would be the IP address or the domain name for the host, and then the R port would be the port number for that. And I believe this is also pre-configured. So when you actually go into the exploit for MS17, the default port for it is 445. So if you've done Nmap and you figured that they have configured their network to use a different port instead of the 445 port, you would come here and you would change that port because you've already done recon and you know that that service that you're targeting here is not on the default port. So then once you've done that, you also have the payload options that have the listening host, which is going to be your IP address, your attack box's IP address, or your personal machine's IP address, and then the listening port, which is usually 4444 or something like this. And in a lot of intrusion detection systems and a lot of SIM software, and even just by the education of security analysts, we've kind of determined that if we see something like 4444, that's probably Metasploit. So I would recommend getting into the habit of using a different listening port that's a random port that's not 4 consecutive numbers. 4444, 7777, 9999. Like these things, for the most part, it's like, oh, that kind of feels like somebody is using Metasploit to try to exploit us or scan us or whatever it is. So that's one of the things that I learned when I did a lot of defensive security exercises, where like as we were trying to investigate to see what was happening, the port number was the giveaway. And it's like, oh, I recognize that, because like we went through all of the pen testing exercises, and a lot of them had to do with Metasploits and all these different ports. And when we went through the defensive security stuff, I was like, oh, that's literally, it looks like somebody's doing what we were just doing in the pen testing stuff. So that's the key that I would say find a port that's open on your system that is a random port that nobody's going to notice because it's not obviously Metasploit, right? So that's basically it. So Windows 7 and Server 2008 are the exploits that we're going to be targeting with this given exploit, which is the MS17 exploit for Eternal Blue. The options will vary depending on exploit that you use. So for example, we have the enum domain users, so to enumerate the domain users. And if we look at that, these are the only options that are required for that compared to the list that we just saw right here for the Eternal Blue. We can see that this basically has three different options. One of them is required, which is the session. So the session to run this module on. And so you would need to background a session inside of MSF and then figure out what that session number is. And then you just, when you get into this particular post-exploitation, you see this, right? So this is a post-exploitation tool that we have here. So this is assuming that you've already completed your exploitation phase and now you have that interpreter or some kind of reverse shell or something running. And then from there you have backgrounded that session and you have that still actively running. And then now you're inside of post-exploitation, which now allows you to enumerate those users for that given session that you've backgrounded. The show command can be used in any context followed by a module type, which is the auxiliary, payload, exploit, etc., to list available modules. The example below lists the payloads that can be used with the Eternal Blue. So we're inside of the Eternal Blue again. We're going to say show payloads, and it's going to show us the list of the payloads that are available for this. And it shows us the description of them as well and what can be done with them. I think it's actually a longer list for Eternal Blue. That's just kind of like the shortened version. And from the MSF prompt, the show command will list all of the module. So if we use it from the actual Msfconsole prompt right here, so you can do back and then you go back to it. And then from there, you can essentially do show to list all of the modules that are available. And then you can do show options, as we have seen, that are very identical to each other. So you can leave the context using the back command. So this would be a context that we're in. We can press back, type back, and then it would take us back to our basic command line. You can gather information about any module by doing the info command within that module's context. And essentially Eternal Blue is where we would be, and then info would give us everything from the name of it, the module, the platform that it runs on. Is it a privileged? Yes, it is. Meaning it is a privileged exploit. It helps you gain or it requires privileges. And then we have the disclosed date on it, the person that created it, the available targets, Windows 7 and Server 2008. Check supported, yes, these are the options. So without needing to go into the exploit itself, you could literally just do the options themselves or do info, and then it'll show you what all of the options are that you can set, and then there's a long description of it, the references, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff that you can get from the info command. And then you can use the info command followed by the module's path from the Msfconsole without actually getting into the context. So you don't have to get into it to be able to get all of the info. You could just do info and then give it the name, and it'll still be able to get you that information. It is not a help menu. It'll just display detailed information on it, like the author, relevant sources, so on and so forth. And then you can search for things. So you could do search and then do MSF or MS17. You could do search and then you could give a common vulnerability ID. You could do search and then you could do Apple iOS, right? You could essentially add anything after search and it will bring you a bunch of stuff. So in this particular case, MS17.010.010 is pretty specific, so it's a handful of stuff that comes up. But for the most part, there's a lot of stuff that can come up when you do a search command if you don't do anything very specific. So it'll give you an overview of each return module. You may notice the name column already gives more information. You can see the type of module, auxiliary exploit, the category of the module, scanner, admin, Windows, Unix. You can also use any module returned in a search result with the command followed by the number. So instead of saying use auxiliary you could just say use 0 because that is the number that's been assigned to it. and then I'm going to run a bunch of these exercises with you. I'm just going through all these things. There's something in the ranking column that's important to understand. So when something has been ranked based on their reliability, it tells you whether or not you can rest assured that this will work if you run it. So if it has a manual ranking or a low ranking or an average ranking, it's probably not usable, or it's not stable or reliable. If it has a good or great ranking, it's pretty solid. If it has an excellent ranking, I mean, you will never crash, right? The exploit will never crash the service. This is the case for SQL injection, CMD execution, remote file inclusion, all of that stuff. Like all of that is pretty solid if it's getting an excellent ranking. You can direct the search function using keywords like the type and platform. If we wanted to search results only for auxiliary modules, we could set the type to auxiliary. So search type auxiliary and then telnet. So it will only show you auxiliary types that have to do with telnet. And then that's pretty much it. So please remember that exploits take advantage of a vulnerability on the target system and may always show unexpected behavior. And that's pretty much it for this. I just realized that I didn't answer the questions that we had in the last task that we were just at. So sorry that I'm going backwards. I feel like this is the only time that I've actually done this. So let's go look at these questions here. So it says, what is the name of the code taking advantage of a flaw on a target system? That is an exploit. What is the name of the code that runs on the target system? That would be a payload. What are self-contained payloads called? These are singles. So we just talked about them right here. So singles are self-contained payloads. And then we have is Windows pingback reverse TCP among singles or staged payloads. And Windows x64 payback is among the singles. So right here, we see this right here, right? So if we see it, it's based on the underscores right here. So is it singles or staged? And we gathered that if it's separated by the underscore between the shell and that would be an inline or a single payload. If it's separated by the /, it is a staged payload. So that's what we have for those questions. Again, sorry that I didn't answer them right away as we were there. So now let us look at these questions that we have at the bottom right here. So it says, how would you search for a module related to Apache? So let's just do that. We'll just type search, and then we would do Apache and press enter. And it'll bring 318 freaking modules that have to do with Apache in some capacity. And you can see this one is ranked excellent. This is average. This is normal. This is probably easier if we actually open this up in full screen so you can really see the full breakdown of these things, because they go into multiple lines. So if man, that doesn't help that much either. So it's not that great of a difference. So we'll just do it like that. But yeah, that's how you do search of anything, right? If you're trying to find anything that has to do with anything, you just do search, and then you go into that. And then if I wanted to use one of these, I could just be like use 315, right? Press enter, and now it's been configured. And now I'm using option 315, which is the Unix web app PHP mailer. That's where we're at right here. And if I wanted to go back, I just type back, and I'm now back in this thing. I can clear my screen, and I can do search for, what can we do? Let's do Linux. Press enter. It'll bring me 2,462 options, right? That's pretty crazy. That's a lot. Search for Windows. Let's see how many that comes up with that. 5,191. That's pretty insane when you think about it. But I mean, it's understandable because there are way more Windows operating systems across the world in enterprise environments, because they're easier to work. They have a GUI, and they've been designed for enterprise environments. So yeah, I think 80% of all workstations in the professional realm are Windows, because of the Active Directory and the way that management of those things can be done. So yeah, essentially search and then just fill in the blank, and then you'll be able to find whatever that you want. So if I could do Eternal Blue, for example, in this particular case, we only have 29, right? So eternal blue, and then it basically gives us the SMB MS17 010, MS17 010, but these all have to do with that eternal blue vulnerability, and so this will allow the person to do a variety of things. So eternal blue just by itself is the remote Windows kernel corruption. This one has to do with the PS exec option. This one has to do with the command line probably. This has to do with the server message block, and so on and so forth. But they all have to do with the version of Windows that has that eternal blue vulnerability on it, right? So that is how we run some search commands. And so if we wanted to do it for Apache, it would be search Apache, right? So who provided the auxiliary scanner SSH login module, which means we need the info for that. So if we do search SSH login module, I think, is that what it was? No, what is it? SSH login, that's basically it. So search SSH login. I think there's only 2 of them. And then so we want the info for 0, which is that first one. And so there we go. So now we need all the information of this thing, and it says who provided it, and it's provided by Todd B, TODB, and that is the person that is the provider. So there we go. We were able to do some good research on that. So we were able to search. We did some searching. We were able to search for Eternal Blue or MS17. We have looked at the various options to be able to work with it. So let's run that a few times as well, just so you can kind of see what that's going to look like if you actually had chosen any of these things. So I have, let's clear this one more time, and I'll do search for SSH login, and then we have these options. I'll do use 0, and it will then use that auxiliary scanner. And now we're going to do show options, and it's going to show us all of the options that have to do with this SSH login. And you can see that there's a good amount of them that are required, and there's for the most part they've all been filled in. This one has not been filled in, which is the R host, which is going to be our receiving host, the target host. But all of the other ones seem to have already been set. So I would say I haven't used this one before. It is for secure shell login. So I mean, I guess this could be something that is fairly useful to us. I did not see what it was ranked at. So let's go back and let's do search SSH login one more time. And then let's see. Oh, they're both ranked normal. So they're not really the best rankings. Maybe that's why I never used them before. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, that's how you run show options for something. And that's how you look at the options. And then if you wanted to see payloads, you would just do show payloads and everything that we've discussed so far. So it is fairly intuitive. It's fairly easy to kind of wrap your head around it. And then if I type in history here, we can see everything that I've typed so far inside of my session, which is a lot. I have worked with a few different things here. Oh no, these aren't even in my session, because these are, look at that. So this is, so let's see, the Nostromo code execution, L host, R port. Somebody used this exploit previously, so maybe it's on the attack box IP address that was generated for that I am now using, that they ran this. And so these are all of the options that exist, or all of the commands that that person had ran. Icecast header, web delivery. That's cool. So to see commands you have typed earlier, but you know, you've been with me the entire time that I've been recording this. And this is also the entire time that I've been live on this particular attack box, which is this attack box right here. So on this particular IP address, somebody was running a bunch of different exploits. So that's interesting to see. But I believe that's pretty much it. That's like the gist of how we can interact with Msfconsole and find modules and find payloads, so on and so forth. So from now, we can move on to working with these various modules. All right, as we have already covered, you can use the use command with the name of the module or the number attached to that specific module to be able to use that module. And then once you're there, you can use the show options command to see the list of the required parameters, and then you would set those various parameters. This is the normal command line, so you can't run Metasploit commands here. It only works when you're inside of the Metasploit command line, the Msfconsole command line. And then when you're in the context of any given exploit, this is what it looks like, or auxiliary or payload or post, any of those things. When you're inside of the context of that, it changes your command line. And then essentially this forward arrow, not, what is that, like a greater than symbol, that ends up being on the right side of the actual exploit name, so you know that this full thing is your actual command line. And you've already seen me do that a few times, so you know what that actually looks like. And then we have the interpreter prompt, which is an important payload that we will see later in this module. And this means an interpreter agent was loaded on the target system and connected back to you. And you can use specific commands on that here. And an interpreter is essentially like a shell. If you get a shell on the target system, then you actually get your command line that changes into the command line of your target system. So the interpreter is like a shell, but there is also the actual shell that you would get on your target system as well. And then you can run show options, as we've already talked about, to get the options of your specific module or exploit that you're going to be using. Some of these parameters require a value for this to work. Some required parameter values will be pre-populated. Make sure you check if these should remain the same for your target. For example, a web exploit could have an R port, the port on the target system. We'll try to connect and run the exploit. The value preset to 80, but your target web application could be on 8080. So you need to verify where they are housing their web application. So in this example, we set the rhost parameter to the IP address of the target, which using the set command. So that's what it looks like. You do set rhosts, and then you actually give it the target of the, or the IP of the target, which is actually very different from the one that they gave me. So that's not the one that we are probably going to be using. So where were we at right here? We're right here. And then so you set that, and then you can again do show options, and then you'll see that your rhost has been changed. So if we actually look at it right here, I don't know why it's not zooming fully. There we go. So the first time that we ran show options, there was no rhost value, right? So no current setting over here. And then the next time that we ran it, because we have already set the rhost, we can see that that has actually been changed. And now all of the required fields have been populated. So you're pretty much good to run this thing, right? And then from here, once you've set it, you can use the show options to check the value that were set correctly. Parameters, you will often use the rhost, which is the remote host. There we go, remote host, not receiving host. The IP address of the target system, a single IP address or a network range can be set. This will support the classless interdomain routing notation, which could be this. So for example, we did this in the networking basics, so you should know what that means when you do a /24 or 16 at the end of an IP address, and essentially what part of the subnet you're designating when you do that. Or a network range, so if you do 10.10.10.x and then, you know, dash 10.10.10.y, then you're taking from this range to this range, basically. You can also use a file where the targets are listed, and there needs to be one target per line using this specific file. So let me see if we can open this up a little bit. So we have our print working directory. So they have inside of that, they have the targets.txt file right here. And the targets.txt file has all of these targets in it. And then so they set their host file to the working directory targets.txt. So inside of the root desktop, there was a target.txt file, and then they set their our hosts to that file. And then when you do show options and you come over here, let's go find our host. There we go. Our host is now the file that is on our desktop, right? So Where were we? We were over here. Okay, very good. And then R port would be the remote port, the port on a target system where the vulnerable application is running. Payload would be the payload that you want to use to exploit. L host would be your local host. L port would be your local port. And this is the data of your attack box or Kali Linux machine. And then the port that you will use for the reverse shell to connect back to. And just to make it a little bit less conspicuous, I would use something that's not 4444 or something like that. Like try to find something that's kind of like a jumbled up port number. This is the port of the attacking machine. You can use it, you can set it to any port not used by any other application. Each connection established to the target system using Metasploit will have a session ID. You will use this with post-exploitation modules that will connect to the target system using an existing connection. And you can overwrite any set parameter using the set command again with a different value. So you can basically reset things. You can also clear it by doing unset to clear all the parameters, or unset all would be to clear all the parameters, but then unset would be for any specific one. So if you did unset our hosts, it would unset that specific one. If you did unset all, it will unset everything. And then you can do show options to just verify that everything has been unset again. And then we can do the set G command to set values that will be used for all modules. So set G command is used like the set command. The difference is that if you use set to set a value and you switch to another module, you will need to set the value again. When you do set G, it allows you to set the value so that it can be used by default across all of your different modules. So for example, your R host, your remote host, not your, let's say your listening host, your local host. For the most part, you're going to probably have the same IP address because it's the IP address of your machine that's going to be as your local host. So that you could do set G for, so you don't have to reset it every single time you switch back and forth between these modules. You can then clear any value with doing unset G. And the example would be this. So MS17 Eternal Blue, we set our host using set G instead of the set command. We use back, and then we use an auxiliary module this time around, and then show options shows that the R host parameter is already populated with the IP address of your system. So we see that we're using this, and then it's changed to this, and then we set G the host to 165.39, and this is what the success of that would be. So if it does it for you successfully, it shows you that, and then we type back to get out of it, and then we use another one, and then it's changed to this new context. And if we do show options, we can see that the R host is still set as 165.39. So that is what the set G does. That's what the power of it is. So it sets a global value. So set G for set global. That will be used until you exit Metasploit or clear it using the unset G command. Using module. So once all module parameters are set, you can launch the module using the exploit command. Metasploit also supports the run command, which is an alias created for exploit command, as the word exploit did not make sense when using modules that were not exploits. So port scanners, exploit vulnerability, So instead of, we typically were able to use exploit before, but now we just use run to essentially run everything. Once we've set all of the options that we need to set and we're ready to actually run it, we just do run as the final command instead of doing exploit, because if it's not an exploit, if it's an auxiliary, or like they said, or a port scanner or something, at that point, it's like, okay, well, it doesn't make sense to use exploit anymore. So anyways, the exploit command can be used without any parameters or using the -z parameter. The exploit -z command will run the exploit and background the session as soon as it opens. So this is what it means to background something, so that you can go and essentially use a like a post-exploitation technique to come and reference this specific backgrounded session that you have for this one right here. So exploit is done, right? So you do this and then you do exploit -z, starts to reverse TCP handler, connecting to the target, sending, okay, sending, okay, all right, session to created. So meterpreter session was opened, meaning that it's actually completed the exploit, override complete successfully. So all of that is done. and now session 2 has been created in the background. So now you actually have your session in the background. So if you want to see where they are, you can use the background command to check the session prompt and then go back to the Msfconsole. So if we actually, excuse me, we can also do the background command to background the session. So let's say you're actually actively in the interpreter session, you would do background, which is the equivalent of doing the -Z at the very beginning, except now you're just doing background, and then it backgrounds the command from where you are, and it ends up with your being inside of your sessions that have been listed for you. Alternatively, Control-Z can be used also to background sessions, and then the sessions command can be used from the console prompt or any other context to see what your existing sessions are. So you can do that, and then it'll show you. So the first one is this one, and I mean, it looks like they're both exactly the same, but that's basically it, right? Like you do sessions, and they're doing it in the context of Eternal Blue still here, so they're not inside the main command line here. They just ran sessions, excuse me, and they were able to pull it up, and then you can see that they have 2 sessions that are going right here, and then they do back, and then they're now in the main command line, and then they did sessions, and again, still they'll be able to see both of the sessions. So if you want to interact with them, you can use the I option, so the -I option for interact. So these are your sessions. You would do -I2, and then now you're starting interacting with the interpreter session right here, and then it changes the command line back from MSF6, and it's going to the interpreter because you're now back inside of this interpreter shell that's over here. So that was the gist of the back and forth conversation that we have with our tools here, our options here. So I'm going to answer these questions, and then I'm going to try to actually run an Eternal Blue exploit for this one machine that we have. So let's see. All right, how would you set the L port, local port value to 6666? We would do set L port 6666. How would you set the global value for our host to that? We would do set G, right? Set global our host, and then just give it the IP address. What command would you use to set a payload? Or to clear a set payload, excuse me, and that would be the unset and then the payload itself. And then what command do you use to proceed with the exploitation phase? And that would be exploit. You can also use run. And that's basically it. And then we have the summary at the end of this. But before we do that, I want to actually try and do some research against this IP address that we've been given right here. It's the Metasploit R1. And I want to see what that is. And if there's a way that we can actually use the Eternal Blue exploit to exploit it. So let's see if we can do anything with it. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to run an nmap scan, and I'm going to run it against our IP address, our target IP address, because I'm trying to see what is available over here. And I'll give it a couple of minutes, and then I'll come back to it, and then we'll see. Oh, there you go. That was very quick. Okay, so we have a bunch of ports open here. So Microsoft DS right here, which is on port 445, which is the port that was the default port for our Eternal Blue right here. So let me see what else we can do. I feel like, let's see if we do nmap, and then we do -SV for version, and I can even do -O to get the operating system and all that. And I'll do -P for the port, and then I want port 445 because that's the one that I presume is the one that we would be targeting. And then we're going to do the 10.10.209.144. We're going to run that, and let's see what data we can get for that port. All right, cool. This is a lot of data. So it is 445 Microsoft DS, Microsoft Windows 7 to 10 Microsoft DS, work group, MAC address. OS may be unreliable, whatever. And what else do we got? I think that's pretty much it for the most part. And so this was Microsoft Windows 7, and it was one of the ones that was listed as the exploits for Eternal Blue, right? So, and by the way, remember, I literally did all of this. I'm still inside of the MSF command line, so I was able to run nmap inside of the MSF command line. So very, very useful. So now what we want to do, I'm going to search for Eternal Blue. Oh, let me do this. And then we have these things right here, and I think the main one is this big one right here at the top. So the exploit Windows SMB MS17, da 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 da. Rank is average, rank is normal, rank is great for this one, SMB double pulsar. Let's see which one they used inside of our exercises that we have over here. So they're using the SMB MS17 Eternal Blue, like I think it's like the regular one, the basic one. And let's see the info that we have here, because it does show us what it does. Yeah, Windows 7. So it does apply to Windows 7. So I think that's the one. I believe that is the one that we're going to end up using. So I am excited about that one. I do believe it is the average one, so it doesn't seem to be like high in reliability. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how well this is going to actually execute against the target machine that we have over here. But I think for the most part, I think it's going to be good. I think we should be able to actually run it and establish some kind of a interpreter session or something like that. So let's, oops, I forgot. So let me do search one more time, and then I'll do Eternal Blue, and then we'll do use 0, because it's the very first one, right? So let's go up. Yeah, use 0. And that is the one. So we're going to press enter on that, and then it's now set it for that. So now we're going to do, I wonder if you could see this. So I'm going to kind of shrink this so I can zoom in a little bit better for you here. So there we go. That should be a little bit easier. Now we're going to do show options. And so these are the options. So at the very, very top here, we have our hosts that we have to set. So we're going to do set our hosts. And then it's going to be, let me see if I still can paste it. Whoops, that's not the one. So I got to go find that host again, which is this guy. So let's just type that in manually. Okay, very good. So we have set our host already set for us. And then we have the set our port that we don't need to do because it's already on 445 and that's already been established. And then the L host is 10.10.132.253. And I don't think that's my actual attack box, is it? Oh, it is. 10.10.132.253. Okay, so that's good. So that's all good. And that's my listening port. And that's all good. For the most part, I think we're okay. So let's just run. Press enter. Let's see if this works. Look at that. That worked like a charm on the first try and everything. So we now have a interpreter session that is available here, which means this actually worked the way that we wanted it to work. So I wonder what I do, like ls or something. I wonder what I can do here. It doesn't seem like ls is working. Oh no, it did work. Oh my god, there's a bunch of stuff. Holy cow. Okay, so ls definitely worked. I didn't realize that. I forgot that it was a Windows machine because we're doing a Windows machine. So technically, ls should not work, but interestingly enough, it does. I think this is giving me ls of my own machine. This doesn't make sense. It's so weird. Okay, so let me see. Let's see. Let's do cd usage cd directory. Okay, so print working directory. Okay, so it is on the actual system that we're in. So it's Windows System 32. That's exactly where we are. So let's do cd, and then we'll go to the main location here, and we'll do print working directory. And operation failed. Cannot open the file specified. Why not? cd ... print working directory. Okay, very good. cd ... print working directory. Okay, there we go. Now show me what's in here. Okay, very good. So here we go. So we have all of these things. We have a flag1.txt. That's interesting. So let me see. I wonder if I can do cat. Because technically, whoops, that's not. Operation failed. The system cannot find the file. But okay, so I guess you can actually use cat. That's very useful, honestly, because we're technically access the machine. There we go. That's, I mean, I don't know if that's part of what we're supposed to be doing, but there's our flag. So I'm kind of like jumping ahead of the game here. But basically, now you see that we got this shell into this target Windows machine, and we were able to get our flag. And let's see if we can actually go inside of the users directory here, and let's see what kind of users we have. We have all users, John, public, desktop, so on and so forth. So you can see, right? You can see that this is actually working, and I was able to get what I wanted. So now I can do a background to just background my Meterpreter session. And now you can see that that's been over there. So I can do sessions, and I can see that there is my Meterpreter session, and I can do sessions, and I can do interact with one, and it will take me back inside of my Meterpreter session. I believe exit would get me out of that. There we go. So we've officially closed our Meterpreter session, and I can go back and get out of my exploit, and then I can do exit, and I can get out of Msfconsole, and now I am back in my regular computer in my attack box here, as you can see by the command line. So very, very cool tool, very fun tool, and hopefully you've been actually typing around and kind of clicking around the way that I have been, because this is again a free room that you have access to, and you can use all of the stuff that we just did to mess around with Metasploit. So I hope you really did do that. And this is worthy enough for you to install on your own Kali Linux, because Metasploit is a very, very powerful tool for exploitation and pen testing and all that jazz. So that was it. So let's do our quick summary. We're going to do a couple of review stuff, and I'm going to give you some last minute notes, and then we will dismiss you. Okay, so in summary, we have discovered that Metasploit is a very powerful tool. It facilitates exploitation. You can find an exploit, customize the exploit the vulnerable service, do a bunch of different things. You can even do reconnaissance, as you saw me do with Nmap, and you could do a lot with Metasploit. Okay, this is not something that I could simply just sit here and be like, yeah, these are the handful of things that you can do with this. Like, there's a lot that you can do with Metasploit, and we're gonna go through a few more videos to really demonstrate what that actually means and how powerful this tool can be. So it provides many modules that you can use for each step of exploitation, and if you also had used the MS-17 Eternal Blue to gain access to the target machine, it would be best if you did that, and we did do that. They didn't tell us to do that, but we definitely did do that. And you saw me do that, and it was very easy to do. That's kind of how crazy it is. So if you find something that's a Windows 7 machine, it's more likely susceptible to the Eternal Blue exploit, and you don't even need to know anything about coding or any of that stuff. You just need to know how to customize Metasploit and run the exploit. That is like, it's really scary to think about, but that's basically it. So in the following rooms, we're going to be talking about Metasploit and its components and the various capabilities that we have. So very, very exciting stuff for this one. If you found this video useful, I would encourage you to go ahead and like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out, especially in the CySec101 series that we're on right now. And drop a comment. Just let me know what you thought. If you have any questions, as we do progress further into the CySec101 stuff, I do imagine, and I'm going to kind of foreshadow that there's going to be more questions that are going to come up, because for the most part, everything so far has been fairly easily to wrap your head around. And as we get a little bit more advanced, I feel like there might be questions that come up. So just drop your questions. I will respond to your questions. If you have any comments, I'll respond to your comments. I'm pretty active in the comment section. And then if you have really big questions, then I respond with video, and I create videos and respond to people's questions. And then, of course, as always, I gotta shout out Darnell Knight, because this entire playlist was a response to Darnell's comment. And I hope he's watching too, because like we're deep into this playlist. I think we're like easily over 25 videos, or no, yeah, probably. I think we're like over 25 episodes, and then there's the compilations as well. So it's probably now closer to like 30 actual uploads that have happened for this specific playlist. But that's what happens when you drop a comment, right? So drop a comment, say hi, do whatever you want to do, like, subscribe, share, turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out. And of course, drop a comment, even if you just want to say thanks. And another way to say thanks would be to support this channel by joining Hackaholics Anonymous, the premier community for security professionals and hackers. We have 4 tiers: the Cyber Supporter, Agent, Guardian, and Master, and each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content, but the Agent, Guardian, and Master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And you can join by simply clicking the link in the description below. You can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section below, and very much so, I hope I see you in the next video. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker / protector. Love, peace, and chicken grease. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you, and I will see you in the next video. Sorry if my voice was kind of a little bit messed up. I'm literally coming off of being sick for like 4 days. It was hellacious, and I'm kind of back into the recording flow, and I just wanted to make sure that I took care of you guys. So I'm doing this even though my voice is a little raw and I coughed a few times. I tried to cut it out. Hopefully it won't be as obvious after the edit is done. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for being here. Love you guys. I will see you in the next one. Later.